Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from across the world, while shining a light on the day's biggest controversies. I'm Kerry Johnston, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the top headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi concludes his Jordan visit. The two countries enhance cooperation in areas such as digital transformation and cultural exchanges. PM Modi lands in Ethiopia as part of his ongoing three-nation tour. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, visits Israel and assures support for the Gaza peace plan. The two countries discuss strategic cooperation with a particular focus on zero tolerance for terrorism. The Philippines releases a video of what it calls Chinese maritime militia firing water cannon at Filipino fishing boats. Manila says the incident took place last weekend in the South China Sea. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim names new trade and economy ministers as he reshuffles his cabinet to fill several vacancies arising from resignations and expired Senate terms. And a mini auction for the 19th edition of the Indian Premier League is underway in Abu Dhabi. 10 cricket franchises need to fill up 77 slots with a cumulative purse of more than $26 million. Well, today we begin with a disturbing question of what happens to political leaders when they're detained in their own countries. When someone is arrested, should they be cut off from the outside world completely? Well, that's the concern now being raised in Myanmar. At the centre of this is Myanmar's detained former leader Aung San Suu Kyi. She's a Nobel Peace Prize winner who once led the country's elected government. She's been held by Myanmar's military junta since a coup in 2021 that overturned an elected civilian government. Suu Kyi's son, Kim Aris, says he has not seen or heard from his mother in years. He fears he may not even learn if she passes away due to her failing health. He added that no direct access has been allowed, even for family members or lawyers. In a letter sent to Suu Kyi's son 2 years ago, she even described harsh conditions in her cell. She said extreme summer heat and winter and cold made detention a traumatic experience.
She's 80 years old. She's got ongoing health issues. Nobody has seen her in over 2 years. She hasn't been allowed contact with her legal team, never mind her family. So that will be my main focus, is trying to get them to appeal for my mother's release, or if not her release, because that may be rather hard to achieve, then at least get her moved to house arrest back under her own roof in Rangoon, and to ensure that there's independent verification of her condition, and get her basic human rights restored so that she can have access to her family and get the care that she so desperately needs. For all I know, she could be dead already, and the military have spread rumours around that she is dead at points over the years, or she's had a stroke, or she's mentally incapacitated one way or another.
Well, the junta jailed Aung San Suu Kyi on multiple charges, including incitement, corruption and election fraud, all of which she denies. She's serving a 27-year sentence and is believed to be held in Myanmar's capital. Her son said he's received only limited second-hand updates about her heart condition and other medical ailments since the coup. Myanmar has remained unstable with elections later this month, a move widely criticised by foreign governments. Aris said the planned polls could offer a small chance to push for his mother's release, hoping he's urged countries like Japan to increase pressure on the junta.
Because of the upcoming elections that the military are trying to stage, which we all know are completely unfair and so far from being free that it would be laughable if it wasn't so lamentable, I need to use this small window of opportunity when the international eye is slightly more focused upon what's going on in Burma to my advantage. And you know, my mother's been locked up for almost 5 years now, and any sort of extra pressure I can put on the military I have to take and try my best to move things where they can be moved. and I think Japan should be doing more to support the resistance. I realise that neutrality is a thing, but when you can see the situation unfolding as it is, there is a time to take a stance.
And here's the larger picture. Concerns over jailed political leaders are not limited to Myanmar. In Pakistan, supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan recently raised alarm about his health. His family say they were denied access to him for weeks while he remained in prison. There were even false death rumours doing the rounds on social media. Either way, in cases like Myanmar and Pakistan, even basic information about detainees' health remains unclear, with traumatised families campaigning for immediate change. Well, to discuss more on this now, we're joined by Phil Robertson, Director at Asia Human Rights and Labour Advocates from Bangkok. Welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us. How difficult is it for legal representatives and families to gain access to political detainees, such as Aung San Suu Kyi?
Well, in the case of Aung San Suu Kyi, at the moment, it's basically impossible. Sadly, it seems that Burma's generals have locked her away and essentially thrown away the key. There's no one outside the Myanmar military junta who actually even knows where she is. And as her son has said, she's not allowed to receive visits by anyone. We do believe that she's somewhere in the administrative capital of Naypyidaw, but we don't even know if she's in a prison or some other sort of house arrest or detention. She's 82 years old, and there are credible reports, as her son was saying, that she has serious health problems. Frankly, the junta should immediately and unconditionally release her, but I don't think his hope is going to be borne out that somehow they're going to do a deal with her around the election, because the military junta is scared of Aung San Suu Kyi. They're scared of the popular support that she still has across Myanmar, and the Burmese people, I think, if they had their way, would elect her again if there was an opportunity to do so.
And when people are in detention like this, I mean, they have very little contact with the outside world. How does this affect them physically and psychologically even?
Well, if she's being held in solitary confinement, which we believe is the case, the detention can be very damaging. The big issue is it can really bring psychological troubles and harm. Physically, that would also be part of the problem, as mentally people lose a connection to the outside world, they also sometimes fail in their physical health. I'm thinking, however, that Aung San Suu Kyi is very strong-minded and strong-willed, and if anyone can stand this situation, she can. She spent many years in isolation in a residence in Yangon when she was younger, so she's done this before, but this time the conditions of confinement are likely much more difficult, and she's much older. I do hope that if the regime is not prepared to release her outright, that they might allow her to return to her residence in Yangon under house arrest. That was where she was for many years in the 1990s and early 2000, but I'm not confident that they're gonna do that.
And of course, it's not just Myanmar we're talking about here. We've seen a similar situation with the detention of Imran Khan in Pakistan.
Well, that's true. Authoritarian governments fear charismatic popular leaders like Aung San Suu Kyi, like Imran Khan, like many others. That's just a fact. And what they're after by putting them in isolation is to try to break them, to try to break down their resistance, to try to break down the leadership that these people present, and cut them off from any support and to try to diminish them. I mean, I think if the junta could persuade Aung San Suu Kyi to leave Myanmar, that would be the only way that they would release her.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Phil Robertson, thanks very much indeed for joining us. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We turn now to diplomatic fallout following the deadly mass shooting at Sydney's Bondi Beach. It was an attack that killed at least 16 people at a Hanukkah celebration and shook Australia and the world. The tragedy has triggered a sharp war of words between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, with questions over anti-Semitism, terrorism and foreign policy. Israel's Prime Minister has publicly blamed the Australian government's policies for what he called a growing climate of anti-Semitism, directly linking it to the Sydney massacre. Netanyahu said the attack was not an isolated incident, saying that support for a Palestinian state would reward Hamas and embolden those hostile to Jewish communities.
Even today, they are trying to murder. And unfortunately, even today, they succeeded in murdering Jews. They massacred Jews in Sydney, Australia. 4 months ago, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Australia. I told him, your policy encourages terrorism. It encourages anti-Semitism. You call for a Palestinian state, and you are essentially giving a reward to Hamas for the terrible massacre they committed on us on October 7th.
Israeli Prime Minister went further, accusing the Australian government of weakness and inaction, saying anti-Semitism spreads when leaders fail to confront it.
Anti-Semitism is a cancer. It spreads when leaders stay silent. It retreats when leaders act. I call upon you to replace weakness with action, appeasement with resolve. Instead, Prime Minister, you replaced weakness with weakness and appeasement with more appeasement. Your government did nothing to stop the spread of anti-Semitism in Australia. You did nothing to curb the cancer cells that were growing inside your country. You took no action. You let the disease spread. And the result is the horrific attacks on Jews we saw today.
But in Australia, his comments prompted an immediate reaction from Prime Minister Albanese. He was asked by a journalist if there was any connection.
I want to bring up what Prime Minister Netanyahu said today. He singled you out personally, he said, for pouring fuel on the anti-Semitism fire by recognising a Palestinian state. Do you accept any link between that recognition and the massacre in Bondi?
No, I don't. And overwhelmingly, most of the world recognises a two-state solution as being the way forward in the Middle East.
This is what Netanyahu also said. Prime Minister, you replaced weakness with weakness and appeasement with more appeasement. It's an extremely damaging statement. Do those words require an answer from you?
What they require me as Australia's Prime Minister at this time is to bring the nation together, is to promote unity, is to make sure that what the terrorists seek, which is to divide us as a nation, to pit Australian against Australian.
Well, tensions between Australia and Israel have been simmering for months, well before the Bondi beach attack. In September 2025, Australia formally recognised Palestine as an independent and sovereign state, joining Western allies like the United Kingdom, Canada and France in support of a two-state solution as the only path to a lasting peace in West Asia. In August, Israel revoked the visas of Australian diplomats operating in occupied Palestinian territories, a move Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong described as an unjustified response to Canberra's decision to formally recognise Palestine. But the pressure has been building. A recent report claimed there were more than 1,600 anti-Semitic incidents across Australia in the year to September 2025, and more than 2,000 cases recorded the previous year. Some allege that authorities have not gone far enough in preventing violence and intolerance. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese visited a Sydney hospital where he met Ahmed al-Ahmed, the man who risked his life to disarm a gunman during Sunday's mass shooting. Albanese described him as a true Australian hero.
Oh, it was a great honour to meet Ahmed al-Ahmed. He is a true Australian hero. He's very humble. He went through his thought processes as he saw the atrocities unfold. He had gone to Bondi with friends and relatives. He was trying to get a cup of coffee, simple as that, and found himself at a moment where people were being shot in front of him. He decided to take action, and his bravery is an inspiration for all Australians. He is a very humble man.
Albanese also said the gunmen who perpetrated the massacre were driven by Islamic State ideology. Meanwhile, investigators say the two shooters had stayed in the Philippines during the month of November, where it's alleged they received military-style training. Well, as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese faces scrutiny over whether his government has done enough to protect Australia's Jewish community, the challenge now is not only to deliver justice for the dead, but to prevent hatred from claiming more lives. Moving on to Russia-Ukraine talks now. US President Donald Trump says a possible agreement to end the Russia-Ukraine war is closer than before. His comments came after 2 days of high-level talks in Berlin involving the US, Europe and Ukraine. But even as leaders spoke of progress, major disagreements remain. Trump said he held long and positive talks with Ukraine's president and European leaders. He also said he had spoken several times with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The US has offered to provide NATO-style security guarantees for Kyiv, as US and European negotiators report progress in talks to end Russia's war in Ukraine.
And I think we're closer now, and they will tell you that they're closer now. We had numerous conversations with President Putin of Russia, and I think we're closer now than we have been ever. And we'll see what we can do. We want to save a lot of lives. We sell equipment to NATO. We don't spend any money, but we do want to see if we can save a lot of lives. But we're getting closer. We're having tremendous support from European leaders. They want to get it ended also. And at this moment, Russia wants to get it ended. The problem is they'll want to get it ended, and then all of a sudden they won't. And Ukraine will want to get it ended, and all of a sudden they won't. So we have to get them on the same page. But I think that's working along. Very good talk.
European leaders welcomed what they called new momentum in the talks. Germany, France and Britain said they were working with the US on strong security guarantees for Ukraine. They discussed a European-led force that could help protect a post-war Ukraine.
Finally, one of the strongest long-term guarantees is also the clearest one. It's Ukraine's path into the European Union. These security guarantees must be underpinned by firm principles. We will respect the decisions Ukraine makes for itself. Decisions on territories are for Ukraine to take, and Ukraine alone. Likewise, issues affecting the European Union and NATO will be discussed among the European Union and NATO members. In short, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine.
Ukraine said the talks were difficult but useful. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine needed clear security guarantees before any peace deal. He said his country would not give up territory without firm protection and proper monitoring of any ceasefire. Meanwhile, the European Union approved new sanctions with measures designed to target companies and individuals linked to Russia, accused of helping it bypass Western limits on oil exports.
I believe that the issue of territories is a painful one, because Russia wants what it wants, and we can't go any further because this is a long dialogue. We clearly understand what they want. Some may believe it, others may not. But we know with 100% certainty what they want. But of course, we need to find dialogue. And we will do everything to find clear answers to the questions of security guarantees, territories, and money as compensation for Ukraine.
Russia says Vladimir Putin remains open to peace talks, but the Kremlin warned it would not accept temporary pauses or unclear deals. Moscow has not yet agreed to the proposal discussed in Berlin, and territory remains the biggest stumbling block. The US has pressed Ukraine to consider concessions in the eastern regions. Volodymyr Zelensky said the US had proposed a so-called free economic zone in parts of the Donbass region, with a proposal linked to Ukraine pulling its forces out of the region, essentially creating a demilitarized buffer zone. Zelensky called the idea impractical. Ukraine has consistently said it won't recognize occupied areas as Russian, and European leaders say only Ukraine can decide on its land. But on Monday, the Kremlin said Ukraine staying out of the US-led NATO alliance was a fundamental question in talks on a possible peace settlement. Meanwhile, on the ground, the fighting still continues, even as peace talks went ahead. Ukraine said Russia launched more than 150 drones overnight on Monday. Russia, meanwhile, said it shot down Ukrainian drones. Ukraine also claimed it carried out its first successful underwater drone strike on a Russian submarine. Russia, however, denied that attack caused any damage. So the Berlin talks raised hopes of progress, but no final deal has emerged. Security guarantees, territory and trust remain unresolved. For now, diplomacy continues while the war rages on. Now let's talk about the Indian currency. The rupee has breached a line it has never crossed before. For the first time in history, it has slipped past the 91 mark against the US dollar, falling for the fourth straight session. But this didn't happen overnight. The fall has been ongoing, moving from 90 to 91 against the greenback over the last 10 trading sessions. Now that might not sound like much, but in currency markets, it's a sharp slide. Overall, the rupee has fallen by more than 6% this year, dropping 7% over 12 months, dropping around 3% in the last month alone. So what's driving this? Well, firstly, money is leaving India's stock market. Foreign investors such as large global funds have been selling Indian shares and pulling their money out. This year alone, they've sold more than $18 billion worth of stocks. And when investors leave, they convert rupees into dollars. That increases the demand for dollars and weakens the rupee further. Well, secondly, India is importing more than it's exporting. This gap also puts pressure on the currency. At the same time, many Indian exporters are holding on to dollars, expecting the rupee to weaken more. Importers, meanwhile, are rushing to protect themselves from future losses. So what's causing this lack of confidence? Well, India is currently without a trade deal with the United States, and steep US tariffs have hit Indian exports hard. That uncertainty is weighing on investor confidence and on the rupee. According to analysts, unless there's a breakthrough in India-US trade talks, a sharp recovery looks unlikely.
Capital outflows are outweighing India's structural strengths in the near term. Until there is a clear reversal in portfolio flows or a positive catalyst on the trade front, rupee is likely to remain under pressure.
But despite all this, India's overall economy is still holding strong. Inflation remains under control, far below the central bank's comfort limit. Economic growth is running above 8%, the fastest pace in over a year. And the trade gap has actually narrowed in recent months as gold imports fell and exports improved. Well, that's why the country's central bank hasn't rushed in aggressively to stop the currency's fall. The central bank believes the economy can handle a weaker currency, at least for now. But the slide is already having side effects. India's stock market has come under pressure. Both major indices spent the day in the red as global funds continue to pull money out. And there's a clear split among companies. A weaker rupee helps firms that earn in dollars, especially technology and pharmaceutical companies. Well, that's why IT stocks have surged in recent months. But it hurts banks, energy firms and infrastructure companies that rely heavily on imports. So for now, the rupee's fall is a warning sign, not a crisis. But it's a reminder that in a global economy, currencies don't move in isolation. And when the rupee speaks, the markets listen. Now, when times are tough, consultancy firms will usually suggest the following: cut costs, reduce the workforce, and get smarter with technology. Well, now, one of the world's biggest consultancy firms is practicing what it preaches. Consulting giant McKinsey is reportedly planning to cut thousands of jobs over the next 2 years. Senior partners are rumored to be already beginning discussions to slash up to 10% of its workforce. That could mean thousands of jobs gone over the next 18 to 24 months. And the reason? Artificial intelligence, with AI employed by companies in a bid to slash costs. Reports say the new layoffs will hit areas like finance, human resources, research and operations. McKinsey has not officially confirmed the exact numbers, but reports estimate the total count could run into the low thousands. Between 2012 and 2022, McKinsey went on a massive hiring spree. Their workforce nearly tripled from 17 to 45,000 employees. And after a round of layoffs in 2023, that number fell back to around 40,000. And for context, McKinsey's no small player. It advises multi-million-dollar companies like Coca-Cola, Microsoft, and Goldman Sachs. Well, for decades, their most common advice to clients has been job cuts. Now, McKinsey is swallowing its own pill, but it's not just them. Deloitte, EY, KPMG, and PwC have all trimmed staff over the last 2 years, with AI at the center of it all. Just this year alone, Accenture slashed 11,000 jobs. Amazon cut 14,000 corporate jobs. Microsoft said it will lay off 9,000 employees while pouring cash into AI. Intel has been planning to trim down 21,000 jobs to focus on AI chips. The second quarter of FY26, CS reportedly let 20,000 workers go. As AI is the only reason. They point to several factors like overhiring after the pandemic, geopolitical instability and economic uncertainty. In fact, reports suggest McKinsey's own revenue has flatlined at $15 to $16 billion for nearly 5 years now. And that's where AI offers the company a boost by being more efficient with lower costs. But the big concern is not about McKinsey. It's about what happens next when even white-collar jobs are also no longer safe. So as companies quietly restructure behind closed doors, the question is no longer whether AI will change jobs. It's how many jobs will it take and how fast will it do so? That's all we have time for on the show today, but we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Bye-bye.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.
Happy Monday, everyone, from a frigidly cold Washington, D.C. I'm Eric Ham, and this is Firstpost America. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the U.S. and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines.